has got lots to do.
Gord's online.
Yeah, let's call the committee of whole meeting to order 12 o'clock, October 11th, 2023. And we'll go right into approval agenda. Recommended that the committee of the whole meeting agenda for October 11th, 2023 be approved as circulated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rich, all in favor. We're all good. Adoption of minutes, recommendation of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on September 13th. Excuse me, 2023 be adopted. Councillor McCabe, Councillor Bailey, all in favor. Carried. All right. Delegations. We're going to start with Rick Collins from Urban Systems. Welcome, Rick. And you have a little bit of time here to wow us. We'll give you about an hour. So you can take it away.
This may not take an hour. It's all depends on how discussion there is here.
Okay.
No, ignore me, but just for the folks who don't. My name is Rick Collins from Urban Systems at Kamloops. I've worked with the district for a while. Actually, one of my first projects 45 years ago was so I moved the community. And so what we're going to go through today is an update on the development cost charge bylaw. We'll get into that. And what we're showing here, they're kind of small. These are the actual panels that we're suggesting to also show to the community. So part of the steps of updating your bylaw is you have to have a public meeting. And so what we did last time, 2018, was you had these panels printed out and panels, and then people can come up and talk about them, ask questions. So these are the actual panels. I know they're a little small on here, but you can have screens and stuff like that. So just thought we'd go through them a little bit. So start at the beginning. I know this is comfortable with them. We talked about them before, but the DCCs is for which one can build infrastructure that's new to accommodate growth, or something that you're upsizing to accommodate growth, such as expanding your water treatment plant. It exists, but you're building new to accommodate more development, which we know is going to happen in St. Louis, and folks are happy to have happen. But the key is to plan for it in a big way. So this is for water, sewer, road, parks in this community. We don't have drainage at DCC. We don't have a lot of drainage infrastructure anticipated at this point on the horizon. It also covers transportation, roads, sidewalk, stuff like that, and as well active transportation, which we slid into transportation and parks. So the first key, which I know folks like to hear, is what to test about if something's related to development. I said before, if you stopped growing today, would you build it? And if the answer is no, because we wouldn't expand our water treatment plant, for example, because it suits your needs today. Well, then it wouldn't be even on the list. There are some things like park improvements. Would you do that today? Well, maybe we would do that because we want to increase the level of service. Because that's where you kind of play that it's not all for development for us too. So there's that balancing act that you go through. So the thing is to what can't it be used for? Can't be used for operation and maintenance of what you're doing already. Things for existing population and things like fire halls and libraries and stuff like that, just to for other venues. So who pays for them? If you're a single family development, you get time subdivision. Commercial, industrial, multifamily is during building permits. Part of your routine process. There's not changing anything, just status quo. And why would we want to update this? Is because 2018 was when it was last done, and as we know, a lot has changed since 2018. Optimism about developments in some parts of the community is an optimistic and happy part of that conversation. Massive inflation in construction costs is a significant adjustment. Things that cost $1 million now can cost 1.3, 1.5 now. So you want to make sure your costs that are reflected in this bylaw are realistic and current. As well, some projects get built, You want to maybe take them off the list, some get added, and we'll go through all those projects today. But there's a reason, it's just a routine. This is maintenance of your bylaws. This is an important bylaw, and there's a lot at stake, but this is great that you're doing it. I see some, another slide that some communities don't update them as often, and it basically means you're literally falling behind on collecting the money that you collect to pay people to pay their share. The next slide I'll show in a second is the slide that usually comes at the end of the presentation. We thought we'd bring it up because it's what people want to know right away. Is how do we compare? So, one here, this one here is proposed. Sorry. I'm going to come back to the microphone send.
Yeah.
And how those you can see that Sycamoose proposed 12,000, just over 12,000. Sycamoose existing at the bottom there is 600 almost. So there is a little bit of a jump going on, but you don't have to go to the grocery store and see that everything costs more. Cauliflower costs more than it used to in 2018. But there's some other reasons why, and we'll go through that today. But this is really important to see because folks will always come up and say, well, how do we compare to our neighbors? How do we compare in the region? I will take the other side of that discussion and say, well, every community is unique and it should be what costs are required for this community and why, and stand alone. But people still want to see them. So let's just do the review. So some fun stuff. After each one is a date of updated. So Salmon Arm, they're certainly up where it is right now. I've been told. No numbers provided to me, but they're at their 9,500, but they're 2007. So think of what things cost in 2007 till almost 20 years later. But you can see that some are more current, like Revelstoke, 2021 in the region, and they're at 14,000, which is more than what you guys are at. And of course, if you go down to the broader region, the Okanagan, some of them are a lot more, almost double than you are. But again, not bad or good. It's just what relates to that community's development. But just thought we'd show you this. I'll bring it back up at the end too if you want to have more conversation about this. But we just wanted to bring it up to you at the beginning. So let's just talk about a little bit about the process. And this is a conversation magically powered. I'll go through it as quickly as I can, which will be measured in minutes, maybe seconds. First thing you do is estimate your growth. Next slide. So what do we expect to happen in the next 20 years is the window that we're using on this. Determine what it costs to accommodate that growth. We have the increase the capacity of the water treatment plant. That's going to cost roughly $500,000, taking that step in current dollars today. And then the benefit allocation. So something like the water treatment plant, that amount of money, that expansion is only for growth because we're fine today with the capacity treatment plant. So that means the benefit allocation is all for new growth. But something like a trail, which will benefit us today, the folks who live here, for a while, but also those in the future, we said, well, should the people who are coming in the future pay 100% of that when the people coming up are going to also enjoy it? So we said, well, we split it based on populations. It's very simple, it's a very standard approach. 43% to look at growth, the optimistic growth, or the expected growth. We're saying 43%, generally speaking, will pay for, will be paid covered by growth, and the balance will be paid for by existing community. It's really important to understand that because what isn't covered for development or by development is paid for by the existing taxpayer right there. There is one exception that is always a bit of a weird hiccup, is what about grants? And the province does not allow grants to be considered. We say, oh, we're gonna do this majestic park. Let's call it beach park. And we'll put it in the DCC bylaw, but then you get a grant for it. Say that might happen, or might have happened. Well, then your DCC bylaw, like you can't say, oh, we're gonna assume we're gonna get a grant for that. So we're gonna put $2 million upgrade, but we're gonna get a 50% grant, so we'll only put $1 million in DCC. It doesn't work that way. But that really isn't a factor. There's some municipalities where like, but we know we're gonna get money, right? We just know we're that really isn't a factor in what we're talking about today, which is actually giving you some clarity moving forward. And then municipal assist factor is, this is literally not about how much is being paid for by development versus existing. This is just subsidy. Like, we want to subsidize development. Now, the minimum number you can have is 1%. That's created by the province, and that's what's being carried forward in previous bylaws here, in the existing bylaw, and that's what we've assumed carrying forward, that it makes sense using that number. And then we do some equivalent units and calculating copies, basically even everything out, which is, commercial has a different impact than residential and multifamily. We just level it out to a even, make one is even to the other in terms of impact and the need for it. Let me just do math. So on the bottom slides, I'll show you in 2 slides. The top is the projects. That's kind of what's interesting to this conversation. The bottom middle table is just that max, basically following it through. Let's talk about the first thing, which is growth. So the bottom table there has the resulting numbers that came up. They're not dramatically different from 2018. We moved some numbers around a little bit, except for the mobile home RV subdivision new units. Last time that was 20, we bumped it to 400, because that's actually talking with the staff members. That's what's on the horizon. It could be more than that too, but that's what's on the horizon. The approach here too, some people might want to say, hey, we're going to have more growth than this, and we want to be super optimistic. This is not economic development brochure. This is trying to be realistic and temporary, because if you say you're going to have a whole bunch more growth, you'd be super optimistic. That means you divide the cost over more units. If those units don't come up, you'll be short cash. So you want to be realistic in your numbers, and that's what we went through, and we tried to be real. Again, it's when you look back 20 years, will we get this right? Probably not. If you look back historically, the communities, but this is a reasonable review from where we are today, what we see looking backwards, what we're seeing on the books. It's going in the right direction, and it shows that there is some growth too. It's really hard to do one of these development cost bylaws, and I've done it for communities that have like basically zero growth, and the numbers per unit are astronomical. And so this allows that there is some reasonable growth. So it brings the numbers into a more reasonable. Let's talk about projects. So this is basically, we took the 2018 numbers, and you can see the one column there is 2018 cost, what's done, yes or no, and then kind of what's going on in this bylaw. In the top table, and the bottom is just taking that right-hand column and running it through the numbers. And again, this is what we're showing to the public. I know the font is very small on the small one, because honestly, not many people come through those numbers. They will look at the bar chart, which I showed before, which you can see again, and they'll talk about whether that's affordable for them as developers coming into this community. So the nuances at the bottom are there for the people like myself who really like numbers and math, but it really is about what projects is what we're talking about today. So again, all of these projects were from the previous bylaw. You can see the cost. So for example, the Main Street one curb and gutter and active transportation on one side. We basically just increased the cost, didn't change the scale of the work, covering more kilometers. It's not much more expensive. It's actually costs have gone up. And this is also supported by some pricing the district got this year on what's realistic pricing. And then as well, same thing with Finlayson, is just bringing the cost forward into what's realistic cost today. And then Riverside, as you can see, is almost 2.4 million in 2018. It's gone to almost 3. What's interesting about this one for discussion is that originally we had the idea of undergrounding the power on Riverside, but if we went through it and talking with BC Hydro and their costs, it's not just everybody thinks just take the power you put underground. It's actually really complicated. And so the conversation was, it's benefit cost kind of thing. Is it worth it compared to all the other capital priorities that you have lined up, not just in this bylaw, but other replacing of infrastructure and, you know, your fire trucks and stuff like that you need to do just to stay in the community. Because it's not just the underground power, that every lot has to have an underground service to them. And if you go down that road, you've got your street lights on the BC Hydro poles. When you take those poles out, you now have to put in street lights there as well, which is very expensive too. So the idea was, can we accommodate the desire, the vision of making it attractive area, have a space for pedestrian, while still having the underground power? And we think we can. It doesn't result in a massive cost savings compared to the 2.4 you see. That just, there's still all this inflation going on. So that, and then the last one is, another one is the Gills Creek Cycle Bridge. That one came out because since 2018, we just did an active transportation plan. And that was a more wholesome review of what was desired by the community for the community. And that wasn't viewed as a desire in there for the next 20 years. So it just comes out of that cycle of being required. And of course, the last project there, Eagle River, alternatively, that one is in the cycle still, and we just again related that to coming up for a capital cost increase because of our dear friend and enemy that comes up very often today.
Excuse me, Rick. Is it okay if council asks questions? Okay, Councillor McKay.
I wasn't sure if you wanted us to wait till the end or not. Active transportation is, I guess, falls under transportation because you have cyclists in there, pedestrian bridge. What about the pedestrian bridge across the channel? That's a priority for our council, our community.
It can be considered, and it's one of those ones. How will I say this? Is this one that you think that will be funded by municipality or by other parties?
Well, it would be active transportation to connect east-west side of the channel together to hook onto the rail trail.
Yes.
Bring them to downtown core. So it would cause economic growth. It would cause a new industry for Sycamore, really. But it all under active transportation. So I don't know. You're the expert. It's just throwing it out there.
Yeah, oh, sure. And this is the point of this conversation, is to have council understand the projects and agree or disagree with this. So this is, thank you for bringing it up. And so that again, it came back to me for, you know, it can go on the list. Because you know, it's a active transportation. So yes, it can is the short answer. The balancing to that is, you know, is that going to be something that's going to be heavily funded by the community or by other parties, senior government parties? Because if it is funded by there, then do you want to raise your DCC rates for something that will end up being paid for by other parties? Is the conversation that I've had internally, not in this room, but in my head. So that's where I would put it on to council to have that discussion, staff and council. Do you think it's going to actually happen from the last line share is going to be existing taxpayers or new development coming to town, or
I think we would probably only move forward with if we're successful in grant writing. We just finished a $50,000 grant for some conceptual stuff, and we sort of chosen art design, if you will. And now, yeah, we can't afford it, the local tax base, so it would only probably move forward with successful grant writing.
And that's kind of the driver of why it jumped off.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, that's
Yep,
great.
go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I do welcome questions about any of the projects. This isn't me standing out here saying this is what you need. This is, a culmination of conversations with, either before I talk with you and discussions back on your team. We've had a lot of conversations with staff about what should be in, what should be out, what should change, so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question about the list. I guess this is a 2018 list, right?
This is the current list. So this is the 2018, what was happening. And so you'll see on the next slide, for
I was
example.
just like, when did we
Yeah.
develop this list? Was it 2018 we developed the list?
In fact, some of it was a little older than that, but yeah, I'd say 2018 was we went through a big update.
Yeah.
And then this is a revision, but we need to be good through every single project still. And so we said, well, are there other transportation projects that should go on here? We had some that came on the list and they bounced off again. We said maybe yes, maybe no. Again, from that idea too is having the real cutthroat filter of, is this truly for development, or is this kind of what we want for our community? And so we were quite realistic about that, so that I've been through the DCC bylaw before for other communities, and there's sort of like this, like, put this on it, put this on it, put this on it, and then you go to the public, you go to the development community, and they're like, stand behind this list, like prove to me as the person paying this $12,000 a lot that this holds water. And so, and sometimes some projects are hard to defend compared to others. This list are the ones that are like pretty good. You won't have trouble with this whole, in my opinion, holding water with developers coming in. I can see why you need to do that. I can see how that improves accommodate the development and align with the growing community.
One other, so the 1% contribution limit, that derives from this list, 2018 list, and that's how we get to the 12,000 and change kind of proposed DCC. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we took the growth that we had in the previous slide, and then we took off the benefit factor, which you can see down on the bottom, it's 40, basically.
Yeah, 43%. Yeah.
And then we took off that 1% as well, just to, right off the top too, because you have to cover that.
Right.
It's, folks in Victoria have mandated that for decades in the process, so that's not gonna go away anytime.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, and just for clarity, Rick and Jeremy and Daryl sat down and reviewed our entire master infrastructure plans, because I know those have been on the works for years, and that's what they went through, our master infrastructure plans along with our previous lists and tried to tie them all together. So just so everybody has an idea of the process in terms of picking the projects on there.
Yeah, we have a multi-page table, which Daryl has on this. And if you look at it, it's actually really great how it looks right now with pens and markers and highlights. It's just an indication of how often we've gone through it and we've really vetted them. We've updated costs. We said, well, maybe this project is not in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years out. So, and all these projects are tied into that master. This isn't standing by itself in isolation. This is talking to your broader capital plan. Underwater now?
Yeah, go ahead. Are you good? Ian?
Oh,
Yeah.
All right.
Here, try it again.
There we go. Water projects. So again, we've got some water looping as the first one that helps to improve fire flow to accommodate the community, and it also helps the existing community as well. There's an older pipe there, so that's why we did the balance of it. Western Channel Reservoir, again, oh, so the first one was already built too, so you can see it built, when it had the ACC, the whole more. So it didn't make it onto the 2023 bylaw of it. Taken on. The reservoir, other side of the channel, that's been out there for a while. The master planning saying eventually we'll probably need a reservoir over there. It was deemed to be mostly a benefit to the existing folks, because more development comes in, but their fire flow is the exact same. If the fire flow was 60 liters per second in place, and now there's 2 houses and it's still 60, they have an impact on the desire for fire or a need for fire flow. But there was some benefit, so we've identified that there as well. And then the next 2 projects were again just fire flow up with inflation having an impact. We see that first one. The main upsizing Riverside from Maine to Capel. The price actually went down, which is surprising. But it was because when we looked at the cost and the actual costs that were coming in 2023 construction, the original cost was kind of aimed a bit too high. So it's like, well, let's just use some more of the best numbers and so it was aimed too high in 2018, so we just brought it down to what numbers. That's the now. But then as well, you see a new project on there, which at the time is the water treatment plant. Back in 2018, the expectation for growth and the window in which it was going to be needed to put more filters basically in the treatment plant, which was always a plan to expand it, put filters in. It was outside of that 20-year window. Well, now things are getting closer, development. So it comes into that 20-year cycle, so it's the radar on this. Center. So the last DCC didn't have a sanitary component. This is the biggest change. Whole thing didn't have a sanitary component because it just come off a major capital. The DCC amount was drawn down to help facilitate that capital. And so as things move forward, planning evolves, and I find, yeah, there's some things we need to do. I know we talked last time, there's work on the rapid infiltration basin, all those sorts of things. So identify, we're looking at all the things that are needed. Will these projects stimulated by growth? Yeah. And are they going to be needed to meet this future development? All part, and the answer is yes as well. So they came up on the list. So one is about well lift station upgrades. That's the station where it just getting closer to its maximum capacity, so it's a plan to accommodate more flow, higher peak flow. And then the liquid waste, the ones that are the WWTP, wastewater treatment plant. So basically just planning for the expansion of that facility. The first one is the liquid waste management plan, which is basically the process recommended by MOE to help facilitate growth of your treatment plant. And basically is do a really good plan and talk to the folks you talk to, First Nations, your community members, regulators, and make sure that you have the right plan to take you for the next 20 years. Some people will say. I like to say it's longer than that when you're talking about land use and how much land do we need for our treatment plant. You want to think longer than 20 years, but it's that longer term plan. So it's in there for sure. And then the rapid infiltration basin expansions, and then the upgrades is others for the treatment. For the rapid infiltration, that you get rid of the treated effluent, but the line after that is upgrades to the treatment plant to get the water clean enough to get rid of it. And the last piece too is just upgrade the lift station to accommodate growth. It seems like that's a lot of money. You think the amount of lift stations that you have across their facility. $1 million doesn't go that far. So, you know, a lot of your lift stations are doing well right now. It's not like we're running from the hip, but for the hills are saying we have to deal with a bunch of stuff right away. But we're planning on it. We're doing the planning and the stuff right now as we speak. I just talked with the planner Sarah before this meeting about how we're gonna put growth across the different parts of the community for sanitary flows. So that all comes down to $6 million. So the other ones were like changes of dollars here and there. I mean, dollars be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but this is a bump of $6 million. Work that off. I'm gonna have a table near the end that summarizes all these on swatch, so you don't have to break down these numbers. So parks, this has been a change that has reduced the DCC. This has a lot to do with the lakeshore walkway. There's you know, wondering expectation of whether it will happen within the next 20 years and whether it will actually be happening more through grant and more through you know, property acquiring as part of land transitioning and people dedicating land. So due to the complexities of that specific project, we said, well, we want to count on it happening and development, you know, district-wide development, funding that the next 20 years. It was taken off. Again, trying to get from that balancing of trying to not having the rate increase globally too much. That was why it came off. Beach Park came off because built, and some grant money was received for some of that as well. And then there's some small washroom projects that you know, Finlayson was taken off because just 5 years later thinking about where that park is and how it's being used, maybe don't need a washroom there, but then Old Town being, you know, most of that 294, you know, having a washroom out there. And then just Tecumseh Park is just sort of smaller washroom. So there's some park there too, but you can see we added on an active transportation one on the side. And does active transportation fall under the transportation DC fee, or does it fall under the park? That's a different one. It doesn't matter, I guess is my point, but we put it under the park side of it because it's more of a trail, more so than a widening of a road or sidewalk. It's kind of more of a trail setting, and some communities will call those more park features than road adjacent to village features. So it's debatable. We put it under the park side. Oh, big side. And then so then the next slide is just a bunch of numbers, which is literally a summary of and this is hard to see, but it's just, again, it's what people will see. You know, page of numbers, which is this is how it worked out for each type of development, and you can see that residential and multifamily has gone up about 87%, so they haven't quite doubled. And then for commercial, it's about doubled, it's more than doubled. And then industrial and institutional, you know, just over doubled as well. But again, this is a table that people tend to look at and gloss over, and this is what they typically look at, which is this graph. This is the, you know, what would I be paying if I went and developed in the next community? Because some developers aren't resident in the community and looking to develop, you know, lots in their neighborhood. There are a lot of developers who are out of town that are weighing options compared to other economic ventures for themselves up and down the highway. So that's what this one kind of summarizes into. So again, in the top one, so what I call local DCC comparison, some subjectivity of what you want to call local, but it kind of, you know, upwards of the pack. However, you've also got Salmon Arm that is undergoing an update right now, and you've got Enderby's that was 2018 as well. So I don't know what NRB is doing, but if they go off of the philosophy of update every 5 years or so, they might be due for an upgrade as well, and that would bump theirs up a bit too. And as well with Okanagan, a lot more recent updates there. You can see some big jumps for communities, and you're not near the top of the list. So.
Can I just throw on there that in 2018, for single family, our DCCs were 9,500. So we actually went from 9,500 to 6,500, and now we're back up to 12,000. So if you take, so when we decreased it, we're seeing a double increase now, right? And just also to provide some clarity on the amount for commercial, because that commercial and industrial and institutional are going up quite a bit per square meter. And that's a result of, they don't pay parks, but they pay sewer, and a lot of that sewer capacity is a result of growth. So that's why there's a higher increase on that piece, just for clarity.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
I actually have a question on that. So, I mean, it costs what it costs really at the end of the day, but some of it, there's a huge difference between commercial and industrial. I'm questioning why. Why do we have industrial at 28.11 per square meter and we have commercial double?
Yeah, and it comes down to what's called the equivalency factor. So it's the impact on your infrastructure. So a lot of industrial will be, like a lot of commercial say, like this room here could be the size of a commercial venture that could have a lot of impact on roads, water, sewer, say it's a restaurant or something like that, right? Right. But in the industrial world, this little area
Well, it depends.
is typically not that much. Industrial will be a larger, you think of like square footage of industrial buildings and stuff like that. So it's an equivalency on how much water will they use. And again, there's always exceptions.
Yeah.
There's, for example, community that had a plywood mill come into town and they put a separate meter on them, and it was a whole different financial model that was introduced.
Right,
to make
but-
that work.
Go ahead.
But we're not talking about the water metering stuff. We're talking about DCCs, your development cost charges when you develop the property. I don't know, that one, I'll just say strikes me as kind of odd that it's that far off, that it's like commercials literally double what the industrial is. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty concerned that these are huge increases to our DCCs overall. I instinctively understand why they're there and why we're getting there, but 86% on just a single family home, when we're talking about creating more housing. I just did a little back of the math calculation here. We had a 60 apartment unit go up, it's going to be $500,000 in DCCs. So that's going to add to all of this extra cost that we already know is into the housing market already. And so that really concerns me. Obviously, we've got to find a way and a path forward to figure out how to pay for all our infrastructure needs. But I don't think we should be, I think we should be cognizant that this is direct cost into housing is really what we're talking about. I mean, if that's why I kind of zoomed in on the industrial side of stuff. I'd like to maybe figure out, is that the right cost there versus some of the other huge increases that we have. I think the other thing that really struck me was the mobile home and RV side of it. I would argue that some of these mobile homes and RVs, they take up just as much infrastructure as a single family house or potentially. So then why is that less than if you build a 2-bedroom house? And we have examples of that here at Sycamore, but in terms of the infrastructure, it doesn't take any less infrastructure really. I mean, it's, you just have to hook it up to sewage, water, you name it, and that's the cost there. So just a couple of initial observations from my part, but thank you for the presentation. It's very comprehensive. Just a little jarring.
You know, there's no too much.
No,
And the trouble is that if developers aren't paying for it, then the other side of the equation is paid for by the existing folks that live here. And the whole point of double cost charge, the whole sentiment of it is there. So are you driving the need for it? Then you should pay for it. If you're driving the need for it partially, you should pay part of it. And yes, the questions about equivalencies and stuff, it's basically based off of global expectancies and probably the PhD things about, you know, in general, commercial will be, you know, this much of an impact per square meter compared to the average commercial compared to the average industrial is kind of how it works, especially when you get some of those big storage components of industrial that warehousing their parts, which really doesn't have an impact on that. You know, so anyways, there's no, I'm not going to stand up here and say that these numbers are the only numbers that you can accept. But I would ask you to just take a step back though and say, well, if they're in the right ballpark, how does this fit? And of course, I hear in every presentation about DCCs, it's a lot of money. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying that for a second, it's not a lot of money. I'm saying, if it doesn't come from here, where will it come from? And there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And costs are rising, so that's not going away.
You know what I want to do?
Yeah, no.
We just jump to the.
Yeah, sometimes.
So kind of, again, everybody cares about what happens next, which is really important. So it's a bit of a process. And the first one is exemption for affordable housing. This is a question or commentary about, you know, what about affordable housing? Are we going to make an exception on that? I just think more information coming is exactly what it's coming. And is there a way to not district funds to help fund that through other pockets of money out there? Something that the municipality is working on, and more will come. It's not my time at the mic to have that discussion, but it will come up. And then, of course, this being the public display, the next step was we hear from the public based on this information, and then, you know, you would be informed as to this is the summary of what we heard. This is the feedback. This is how it influenced the process, project, the cost, whatever it might be. And then the bylaw that's already prepared and draft. The numbers have to just be updated. And then it goes to 3 readings, and then it goes to the inspector municipalities for their review, because it's provincially provincial oversight, I guess you could say, after this process. And then 4th reading, and then you implement. So it's a pretty straightforward process. It just does take time. And the one that takes the most time is the inspector. Taking their time could take 3 months, depending on what's going on their docket to go through it. This is an update, so not a massive change. So I'd like to hope it's not going to slow down the process, but it's kind of it's your hand on the plans. That's my last slide.
Thank you very much, Rick. You guys have any questions? Council have any questions? Councillor Evans?
Just a comment. I mean, we've all seen it. It's just amazing and awful how the costs have just gone through the roof. At my job, we were thinking about building a new building, and I think we're gonna have to get creative and probably rent something, because the costs are just astronomically more than they were. So I understand it, but when it comes down to the vote, this is going to be a tough one, because I see the reality, but I also know that the aspiration of the public is going to be massive. And I understand it. I have that exasperation myself, but you've explained it very well. So thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Beach?
Yeah, thank you, Rick. I'm just thinking that we have quite a complicated situation going forward, and so many different things could happen in terms of who'd be responsible, say, for a crossing across the channel. Like, we're looking at an active transit. But we have enough stuff going on that we couldn't actually safely say that that isn't going to become a need of the MOTI to look after. And so I'm sort of thinking, do you hold on to things until, I mean, you wouldn't want to sort of go and do it and then not be able to, or would you do it on your own grant money and then charge DCCs even if say the ministry, the MOTI comes along and has to actually build an access where you just built an active transit? Like, it's complicated here. There's a lot of different stuff that we're kind of trying to consider that could happen in the next, I don't know, 5 years. So do you wait on stuff, or do you know, follow sort of a plan that you thought would work and just, I don't know. This is really complicated.
Councillor Bailey.
I guess a couple of questions. When we're talking about residential subdivision, that's right, when we actually subsidize, you know, when we subdivide the lot, not if we add, okay. So has there been any DCCs you've seen, I guess, in other regions where it's based on the size of the lot because it's based on the size of the house that you can put on there? Because there's a big variations on, I mean, there's some huge houses on a lot.
It's mostly done the way we kind of do it per unit, and I know, and there's some exceptions to the rules.
Right.
There's times where you have, I don't want to name particular communities, but communities that have a lot of heavy industrial influx, temporary heavy industrial influx like mine. And so all of a sudden there's not enough houses in a very short term. You end up having 7 people living in a single family house. So how does that work? And unfortunately, this mechanism, again, this is one mechanism, and it works as it works most of the time situation, and it's a good starting point. It's a safe, consistent, but when, you know, something major comes into town, it doesn't mean you can't have conversations with them about, hey, you know, there's off-site costs that are beyond just these DCC to help offset that. But yeah, but that doesn't really come into play with the single family lot. Like, it's just not the way it works. And if you can imagine going through this, and you know, don't have thousands of staff members, is that you have to go and look at every building.
No, but could I just kind of make my point that I was, you know, there's a difference between an 8-bedroom house and a 2 to 3 bedroom house that you're trying to build affordably. This is what I'm trying to get at. Like, it's not one size fits all. I really don't think so, because if we were going, say there's a small lot and we're like, hey, that's a perfect lot for a 2 to 3 bedroom unit. Well, that's probably an affordable unit. So then why would we hit them with the 12,000 versus, say, a 6-bedroom house? And there's examples around town where there's large homes being built. Like, I'm just wondering, why is it just one size fits all? Because they're not the same. They're not the same building. They're not the same, you know, cost. Obviously, they're not the same. One is gonna take more than the other in terms of services. So I guess what, you know, the real question is like, is there any other communities that do divide it based on square footage?
Well, there are some, say Vernon, but don't quote me on that.
Like Vancouver or something?
They look at, like, for example, carriage houses, and they'll have a lesser cost specifically for carriage houses.
Right.
Acknowledging that they're smaller, et cetera, et cetera. it's not saying that you can't do this. The fun part, which isn't fun at all, is, if you say the costs are the cost, as it's the cost on the capital project list, if you believe those projects are the projects, believe those costs are the costs, you believe the benefit allocation is correct. If you reduce the cost for somebody, you're increasing the cost for everybody else, which is the balance that you need to accept. And you can do that through equivalency factors, through a subset if you want to, but that's basically how it would, like the mechanics of it, like you can slice and dice this one. You can do it off different, you can do industrial off hectare if you want. But that's the thing that I always try to keep remember. If you're making it less cost for somebody, especially this DCP, you're putting it actually on all the other DCP pairs. So then industrial will go up, commercial will go up. And that's not my fault. You can make that change very easily. It's like a number in spreadsheet. I could do it fast as it takes me to say it, and it would change all these numbers. But that's the deliberation. That's the secret thought.
Councillor Rich, then Councillor Evans.
Through the chair, I think the question was answered. So I'm literally looking at the single family comparison and we're pretty much doubling numbers. And I guess my concern is when we're competing, when we look at the numbers you've given us and we're competing against like Revelstoke and Seminarm that have schools and multi-high schools and all those kind of things, when we're attracting or trying to attract more long-term residents, is there any fact sheets out there? Is there someone more comparable to Sycamoose than say Revelstoke? Because I don't think Sycamoose and Revelstoke really compare. They are our neighbor. We're a completely different community. And same with Seminarm. When you look numbers to numbers and what the communities are doing. So
Yeah, you can look on, I'm gonna say almost all municipal websites and see what the DCTs are. Yeah, I didn't have to get into some backroom conversation. Every number you see there, I got off the internet like half of it. So, so a developer will do that too. They'll look at their total costs, look at their opportunities. I do wonder how relevant, somewhere in the piece would be to down in this area, because housing demands are completely different. The commercial industrial sectors are different. Amount of full-time residents versus transient or summer users or short-term workers is different. So I would hesitate. I actually recommend people hesitate to look anywhere other than your municipal boundary. When does it matter what it costs to stay on? Does it matter? We're talking about the whole principle of this is to be fair. Everybody, existing folks and new folks, and there's certain capital programs that are required. And it matters to head of town developers probably, but are you gonna, if you subsidize them, or make it more formal for them to do their work, if that at the expense of not doing stuff, or other folks that do the work. It's just this dynamic tension that there's no great answer. There's no, endless supply of money from Ottawa. There is some money from Ottawa to deal with some things, and the district has been fortunate to receive some of that money. But this is just the dynamic tension. And I'm not going to stand here and say that $12,000 is affordable or not to developers. Every single developer is different. And whether it's the person subdividing a lot to allow their son or daughter to build a house beside them, or somebody building an entire subdivision across the railroad tracks. Well, everything is totally different, but that's where the guys step back a little bit. My advice to you. But again, you can look online and just type in any community you want. DCC bylaw, couple minutes, you'll see exactly what they're current. But I would say recommend, look what year was last updated. That's more telling than.
Thanks, Rick. Bob? Councilor Rabbit?
Thank you through the chair. So for the mobile homes, I'm assuming that it's cheaper because a lot of folks that are putting them on there don't own the land that they're putting it on.
It's also, John is saying it's a smaller facility, less people living in it. Mobile homes will. Generalizing.
Yeah, it's a big generalization. Yeah.
There's 100 exceptions to every rule we talk about. But, you know, it may be people who don't have, you know, a large family or as many people living in the building compared to the 8-bedroom home. Statistically speaking, I'm not saying there's not mobile homes that are RVs. That's a lot of what I've heard, a lot of RVs coming in that might not have 8 people living in them, but statistically speaking, that's what works out.
All right, we're gonna, oh, sorry, a quick comment.
As,
Yeah.
as an addendum, just, so because we're expecting hundreds, because it's more affordable, attainable solution for detached structure, it's gonna be a lot more people moving in that situation.
Okay, Kelly?
Yeah, I just got a comment from Gord. He's driving, so I just thought I'd share. He asked me to share
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
He says that we have to remember we lowered them in 2018 to attract developers, but that didn't happen. We can also set lower DCCs for purpose-built rentals and affordable housings.
Yeah.
Those were his comments. So I just thought I'd share that. And I also, Bianca had looked, and there is in Vernon a small parcel DCC, you're correct. So it's like 14,000 for a regular size. If it's under 400 square meters, it's a small parcel and $9,800. So there could be like, you know,
Can
yeah.
changes.
So I guess then for next steps, are we planning to present these figures in the next month in an open house, or how do you see this shaking out? And I guess the timeline from when we feel good about this to the actual adoption of bylaw and then actually the implementation of these fees. Because that's really important for council to understand as well, because we do have a lot of development on the books. And when do we have to honor this old value versus the new value?
And so the first milestone is, okay, what do you want these panels to show? That's why we brought the actual panels. Do you agree with the projects and you comment on that? And do you agree with the division between single family and multifamily? We don't want to go to the public until something you're comfortable with.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, so I guess just as a way of discussion, there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm kind of uncomfortable with at this point. I'm totally okay, though, to use these as potential numbers to go out for discussion purposes. Absolutely. Am I here today saying I endorse it? No, I'm not. I mean, there's things that I think we need to really think through. We got to think through the unintended consequences of this as well. This is this will be a big, decision, not saying that this isn't where we land, but I think there has to, I'm certainly going to be open to
Conversation about it. Yeah,
conversation.
sure. Yeah, I think we should, council should definitely have a conversation about this prior to putting it on a panel and having a consultation. So, we're gonna have to move on. Anyone else? We're all good? Councilor McCabe?
Sorry.
I'm not gonna ask.
Well, just a quick one. I mean, it's just a statement more than question. I mean, there's only, 60 minutes in an hour and I think you've identified the projects accurately and worked with staff to identify the costs of those projects. So, and they're defensible. So, I mean, the costs are there. And like you say, if you give an exception somewhere, it has to be captured somewhere else. And it only makes sense for users to pay DCC costs as opposed to the general population of the taxpayers. So, I mean, we can't have everything. We try to have our low tax increase lower than any other community. And we're quite successful in having a very low property tax increase. But there are costs that have to service our community and they have to come from somewhere. And it's better to come from user pay instead of spreading across the community.
Agree.
And
Councillor Bailey.
I totally agree, Councillor McKay. I just think there's ways in here that we could be tweaking to maybe bump something up, to lower something down, to also take a look at, small lots versus larger lots, things like that. I fully anticipate these are going up, and they're going up quite dramatically. Does it have to be 87%? Maybe, but could it be dialed back to 60 and we still that's, I think, the conversation that we should have, or where it's probably gonna land.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Thank you, Rick, very much. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, we're gonna move on. The Shuswap Healing Center update. Is Brian on the line?
So Will is, but Brian is traveling, and so he said he might be a bit late, so how about we move on to the next, and I'll let you know when he's
Ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna go to the Sycamoose Fire Department update. Fire Chief. Right. Take it away.
the fire department or the fire smart.
Yeah, it can be both if you like the trust.
I have two separate presentations, so I want to know which one would you like up?
They are closely related.
Which one do you want first?
Fine.
Did what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, through the chair. So this is our spring and summer update for 2023. It's obviously was quite an interesting spring and summer. I think we had probably the largest wildfire in BC's history in May. It was pretty unusual. Can I control it with the?
Yeah.
So yeah, BC's worst wildfire season started in May, and we sent a truck up to Fort St. John to assist with the biggest wildfire in BC's history. So crews responded to 7 different communities, and to the Adams Lake area, we went there 3 times. The photo that you see there is a crew that was at Adams during the August 18th blow up. And the photo on the right is the picture of the camp that ended up getting a bit of an unusual situation, to say the least. Crews and equipment were deployed from up far north of Fort St. John down to the Sluice. A couple of things that are missing here is we'll send a crew over to Farwood, so southeast, and another crew up to northwest of Lillooet, almost above Pemberton. We covered quite a bit of the province this year, and it was approximately 10 deployments that our crew participated in. So people and wildlife were definitely forced to escape the fires. Our crew in Adams saw quite a number of bears that were pushed out of their habitat, and obviously the people were forced out of their homes as well. We worked in Kelowna and got an opportunity to do quite a bit of structural work there and save some structures in those areas. The crews working Adams ended up getting cut off and spent a rather long 32-hour shift in Adams Lake. So in order to try and help our community deal with this stuff, our Fire Smart program, which is what Travis is here to talk to you about a little bit more. I'm just going to give you a quick kind of overview of it. So this year, 2 years of funding, it's $200,000 per year. Fire Smart coordinator's position, which is Travis's position, and Fire Smart crew is also provided for next year's grant funding as well. Crews will be allowed to work on private lands again. So in 2021, 2022, we had crews doing work on seniors properties, disadvantaged people, handicapped people that needed assistance. So they were able to do that work. Last year's work was more debris collection, not so much on specific properties. This year as well, green spaces, so some of our community trails, a lot of folks were expressing concern about some of the trails having debris on the sides of them that, all it would have taken was a straight cigarette to deal with, to create a problem. So we'll have that opportunity as well. SQ equipment is going to be eligible as well for funding. And with our new allocation system, which Travis is going to kind of cover a little bit more in detail, we're an eligible community, which gives us a considerable ease of application. It used to be, a 36-page application where you had to detail every single detail. It sounds like they got it pretty much nailed down now. Just a few stats. You'll note the top line there. False alarms still continues to be a challenge for us. It means that the crews get up at whatever time the alarm goes off, and if it's 3 in, that's what it is. And we show up and we check it out and make sure that there's no fire. Go home. It's kind of a tough way to earn a living, I guess, if you wish. Not that we're earning a living. So we're at 80 responses for this year, so from January to September, and obviously we're not finished the year yet, so it's going to be a fairly significant year with the wildfire responses as well. Quite an interesting. One of the parts of this pie chart is you'll notice at the very bottom there in May, we had our busiest part of our season. And a lot of that was due to a number of grass fires and bushfires that we were dealing with in May. Probably the earliest we've ever had that kind of a response, and certainly more exciting than our typical start of the year. And then fortunately, the community was very good at not giving us quite as many of the burning complaints. People were really understanding of what was going on. So field mitigation, mitigation. So just some concerns for our community, ongoing training and education for the fire crews and the public. Our biggest concern from our perspective is wildfire and flooding. This year, maybe not so much. We had a fairly dry season, so flooding was less of a concern, which is a nice break. But unfortunately, wildfire was not. Wildfire firefighting and swiftwater training is an ongoing process for us. The fire smart program and education for the community is a big part of what we're trying to get accomplished each year, and this year in particular. And something that's being considered is wildland firefighter training for the public. It's a consideration. There's some question mark on that one. It came up during the August 18 fires. Why weren't we trained to fight the fires? Well, that training has been available to any community that wants to do it, and I think it's something that we'll consider offering to our community as well. How that's going to work exactly, not quite sure. So for field mitigation work, east side of Sycamore has had significant mitigation work done up on the Owlhead Forest Service Road. With that, hopefully that's going to assist with the bike trails and stuff that are planned for that area. If you've not had a chance to go up into that area, you should. It's interesting to take a look at it. A lot of the debris has been cleared out of there, and instead of having to really be challenged to walk through the area, it's like walking through a park, which is fantastic. That also allows for better fire protection, because it doesn't allow the fire to get up into the trees as easily. West end of Sycamores are being looked at for wildfire risk reduction, the Ministry of Forest and the BC Wildfire Service. So it's a matter of bringing some proposals there. A little bit different funding away from the CRI grant funding, and it's the BC Wildfire Crews in the spring that do that. So those proposals will be going in, and if we are successful, we may see some work up in those areas as well. And then the fire department crew, of course, will be doing their work in town, getting that type of stuff going. So this is a picture of the crew that we're down to Lillooet. It's actually Gold Bridge. I'm not sure if you're familiar where that is, but basically north and west of Lillooet quite a ways. And they seemed pretty happy. It was a tough go for them, camping on riverbeds and getting chased out by grizzly bears. So interesting trip. Any questions from our
Council? Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. Brett, So I've been doing a little bit of reading and it's probably just something I saw on the internet, but there's communities talking about actually putting like a fire ring around their town, right? So that is that something like we've got, I know nobody ever wants to kill a tree and I get that, but is that something we should be looking at for Sycamus? Because we're pretty foresty.
So when you're talking a fire ring, you're saying like basically an area cleared off around the community.
Before the fire comes, because
Yeah.
you put the firewalls up as the fire comes, you go in and kill so that the fire can't jump across,
Yeah.
correct? Like, I don't know what I'm talking
Look
about.
to the east, that's quite a sizable area that has not a ton of logging that has been done up in that area. And when you look at it now, you can see that there's some areas that have been logged. Some areas that are a little harder to see is the fuel mitigation areas, because there's still a fair number of trees in it. But we've basically done that on the west side of town, or sorry, east side of town. We're looking to do the west side in a similar fashion. And north is a little less of a concern because of the steepness of the slope and some of the challenges with trying to get that fuel mitigation work done in those areas. But the challenge with the ring is we say, well, you know, we want to create this ring of area where the fire can't go through. But the fire doesn't really care. We saw how it's gone through power line areas, it burns through bulldozer lines. It's because embers transplant from the main fire, and it can go kilometers away, depending on what's going on. And this is part of the reason why we're focusing on getting more of the community prepared for wildfire through the Fire Smart program, and a little less focused on trying to create this ring around the community. We saw in Kelowna, that fire jumped an entire lake. That was quite a big jump that it took to land in Kelowna and West Kelowna, and then down to, you know, further down the community of Lake Country as well. So we saw quite a bit of ember transplant from the West Kelowna fire, and it was really threatening to those areas. You can't build a cleared off area bigger than the lake, right? Fortunately, the one in Adams, it didn't cross the lake. That would have got surrendered quite nicely, but it did burst out, jump over the river, and go back up in behind Sorrento. So it's hard to say that, you know, a ring is going to do the trick. I think fuel mitigated areas are a better choice. Right now with Sycamus, we have a burn area that's quite sizable, plus a fuel mitigated area on our east side, and we have a fairly well logged area on the west that's kind of the next area that I want to try and focus on, trying to get some fuel mitigation done there.
Thanks, Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I think this summer in 2021 is waking everybody up that wildfires are a huge risk in the community. And I'm just wondering if you or local departments will be part of a broader conversation with BC Wildfire Service. I mean, there's back in the day, you used to be able to allow fires to burn and potentially go out on their own. That strategy looks like it might not be working anymore, and they're gonna have to rethink that. But are they gonna kind of include, you know, local communities in this as well?
Yeah.
Or have you heard anything?
A big part of what we do is when I started, there wasn't really much engagement with BC Wildfire Service. They were kind of their own entity, and they didn't really lean on the fire departments a ton. Now we see them engaging a lot more because wildfires are no longer just out in the bush. They're burning right up to the edge of communities. And a lot of it is the community's expansion. So part of the thing for mayor and council is to making sure that the areas that are expanding into those urban interface areas are fire smart, right? So they're not having huge cedar hedges. They don't have, you know, juniper bushes throughout the entire property, and having some limitations as to what they can do with their particular property, so that if an ember shower does come in, and it's like a rainstorm, except it's embers, it's not gonna, or less likely to burn down their home, right? And that's some things that you folks can be a big part of as far as, you know, the development considerations and things like that, like last presentation. You know, those are important things, and I see that from staff already where they're trying to integrate this fire smart stuff. It's great. Step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, I just want to say thank you for all of your work and your crew. But so with that last, thought about if you're building in a forest urban kind of area, building codes, requiring metal roofing, that kind of stuff, is that the kind of stuff that would make it, would make a difference for
Yeah,
something to
that's part-
consider?
Part and parcel of it, fire resistant building materials are certainly better. A lot of people are building that way now, where they'll use hardy board siding instead of vinyl. Vinyl tends to melt a little bit too easily. Obviously, you don't see too many places built with cedar shingle siding anymore, right? And not too many places built with cedar shingle roofs anymore, mostly because they can't get insurance. That's really a big challenge nowadays. And I think what we're gonna see is, we're gonna see a lot more of it driven by the insurance industry. Obviously, after a year like this year, which is pretty disastrous, a lot of structure burned, that's gonna affect things, right? Whether we like it or not. And we're seeing within the fire smart community, within a program called Home Partners Plan, which we also participate in, the insurance industry is starting to go, okay, if we're gonna give people a discount if they even just get an assessment done on their property. And then if they do everything, we'll give them an additional discount, right? And it's a little bit small on my mind, it's only like 10%. If they get an assessment on BCA, just announced that they're gonna be doing that. And but it's a step in the right direction, right? And what we see from California is, if you don't get these things done, you can't even buy insurance, which is a little on the frightening side, right? Because that means the people that are moving to our communities are gonna have a tougher time getting insurance if we don't make sure that some of these things are in place.
No.
Sorry, one more. Sorry, Brett, one more thing. Is there any companies out there? So, for instance, a few months ago, we had a recycling company for countertop, composters come through and do a little presentation. Are companies out there that maybe I don't, and I'm not speaking for the council, but where, we say, hey, you can get a roof sprinkler, or you can get this kind of system, and we're gonna give you $50 off your taxes, not speaking for council at any moment, anybody tax-free, anything, but are those out there? I mean, personally for me, because I don't know this, can I get a little sprinkler with skis? Oh gosh, the fire's coming, I run up, I put that on my thing, it's got a timer, and now my house is a little bit safer.
There are companies that do that type of work. What was interesting when we were working in Kelowna, we had a fire coming up a hillside. We're spraying water on it to make sure that it doesn't come all the way up into the houses, and all of a sudden the sprinklers kick in. So I'm getting soaked by some of these lawn sprinklers, and what it turned out is they had their security cameras on, and they remotely activated their sprinklers, which to me was phenomenal. I mean, it was helpful for sure, because any embers that flowed into that area were gonna get put out by the lawn sprinklers. So they have roof type sprinkler systems like that. There's actually a fellow out in Sorrento that does that type of work. And so there are companies that do that kind of stuff. I think what we'll see is more engagement by insurance companies by saying, okay, you've done the work on your property, you've done your assessments, you put up some sprinklers, we're gonna give you some discounts, or we're gonna give you insurance. I think that's the bigger scare.
Brett, thank you very much. I think it's a matter of, we need to stay on top of this now. We need to educate people. Our social media needs to be focused on this. And this year, DOS did a great job of that. There was always something going on about being fire smart, or, watching your cigarette butts, or not letting a fire. And fortunately, we passed bylaw where we don't have fireworks allowed in Sycamoose any longer, which I'm grateful for. I know that people.
Honestly, for me, that's.
Oh, absolutely. And and I know people love their fireworks, but I'm grateful for that, especially this year. And and I still want us to work towards being able for the district of Sycamoose to put their own fire ban on and share that message. So I'm still kind of focused, would like to see that come to fruition as well. Anyone else? Before we let the chief go? Thank you, Chief. Thanks for everything that you guys do. Travis, welcome.
Yeah, so hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the Fire Smart program. My name is Travis. We're sick and loose. Just stay here. There we are. Okay. So fire smarting is still the best means to reduce our community's risk to wildfire. The Fire Smart program continues to be updated based on science, with the most effective means to mitigate our risk to these wildfires. So how did our last year go? We continue to focus on a boots on the ground approach, where we hire a local crew to perform the mitigation work around the community and raise awareness to reduce our wildfire risk. I am happy to report that all the crew members that joined are volunteer firefighters as well, so this really helped our headcount on that. Our team was very active over the summer, attending several community events, engaging face to face. We handed out educational material and had many conversations on the benefits of Fire Smart. We also had some fun with bubbles. We had over 60 property walkthrough signups this summer. How these walkthroughs work, for those of you that don't know or haven't had one yet, our team will go in and assess the property's risk to wildfire. Using a walkthrough assessment, we answer questions to see what changes could make the greatest difference in reducing the risk of damage in wildfire. So homeowners will then use this information to turn their home, their property, and in turn the community more safe and more wildfire resistant. So overall, very successful summer season for the Fire Smart. But let's talk about what's on the horizon. BC, Fire Smart BC has some really exciting changes going forward to the following years. So the first thing, allocation based funding. So Fire Smart BC and UBCM have shifted from application-based funding to allocation-based funding in 2024 for higher risk communities like ours, being in the middle of the forest. What does this mean? So if we compare the two, application-based funding versus allocation-based funding, with application-based funding, we need to apply for specific projects, activities we plan to do within Fire Smart, then hope our application is accepted without delay. This is kind of been the process up to now. But now, with allocation-based funding, it streamlines the whole process, removes us having to apply. Within 30 days of our submission for the grant, you'll actually be accepted and funded. So, huge win there. So 2 years of funding. So previously grant funding was just a year-to-year basis when we apply for it. Going forward, we can apply for 2 years of funding at a time. This gives Sycamoose a total of up to 400,000 towards Fire Smart over 2 years. Not only gives us more confidence that this funding will continue for more than just the next year, but also reduces our admin requirements, costs, and associated. So the next big change here is work on senior and vulnerable properties. So Brett mentioned this as well. You know, compared to the previous year where we were able to go in on properties of seniors, we weren't able to do that this year just based on the grants allowance. But thankfully, moving into 2024 and 2025 and beyond, we are now able to do that again. So our crew is going to go onto the private property of seniors and more vulnerable parts of our community to do that type of work. As well as the green spaces, we are now able to do that. So really cool things to look forward to. So going forward, just to kind of wrap it all up. So each year we go through this program, we learn how to better strategies to protect our community. We learn how to better engage our community on these at times sensitive topics. We saw summer. And so moving into 2024 and beyond, our plan is to continue engaging the community, share with them the best resources we have on making our homes and our community the safest it can be from wildfire.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions? Councillor Beach, then Councillor Red.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Travis. I'm just wondering, in terms of, the tree lots where we have a lot of big, tall cedar trees in small housing residential areas. I think I already know the answer that if your neighbor has got trees dripping on your property, you can't seem to initiate anything being done about that. I guess I'm curious as to how we can deal with, or if you've got any ideas about how we can deal with properties where neighboring trees or your own trees are really a hazard. And I mean, I know it probably would require the council, sort of producing a bylaw about trees that are a hazard for wildfire. And I mean, I really think we're at that point that we need to be looking at that in a neighborhood. So I don't know if you've had discussions around that. I know that I've been in a situation where we wanted help with it, but there's nothing that can be done because it's not on our property and nobody can go in and tell the neighbor to top their tree or, do anything to mitigate the danger. But I really think we're at that point where we need to be able to handle dangerous wild trees that could be susceptible and really sort of threaten the neighboring the whole community or a whole subdivision.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the conversation would be around that, but.
Right. Well, like the fire chief was saying, it's likely to go to the place where insurance will probably be the factor contributing to that.
Okay.
Right now, I would say the best current thing we have is just further education. So continuing to engage. So, I can go and talk to your neighbor and hopefully convince them that they should at least trim this.
So that could be done. That's something that would be done if it was requested.
So just additional to that topic, if their trees are encroaching into your property line,
Yeah.
you can't legally trim them right up to the property line. It's difficult because sometimes structures and stuff are very close, but at least you can get that done. And the idea behind FireSmart is to have, if you're doing the work, hopefully it will encourage them to start looking at, hey, maybe I should get somebody to come in and look at my property and see if they can help me. Especially with folks that are seniors that are not necessarily able to start living trees and doing stuff like that, or younger crews like us.
Councillor Rich.
Just a quick shout out. Your crew was here, there and everywhere. They were out at committees, they were at ASCUs, they were at old people's houses. It didn't matter where I went this summer. FireSmart was there and they were very cordial and outgoing and engaging and just kudos to your team. So thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Travis. Thanks, Chief. Thanks for all you do. Kelly, is Brian here now? Okay, so we'll go to the Shuswap Healing Center update. Brian and Will.
He's there.
Okay.
Your worship, members of council, thank you for hosting us.
Thanks for being here today.
So we are pleased to provide you an update on the Shuswap Healing Center for this October. I think the last time we convened with you is before the summer, so we've done a number of things and we wanted to make sure that council of the whole was updated as to what we're working on. So this is our project update. We've been working very closely with Kelly Bennett and her team, so thank you to them for allowing us to have such great access to the municipal team. We of course like to respectfully acknowledge the land on which the project is going to be built is the traditional lands of our First Nations partners, in particular the Splatsin, and acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and culture of all the Indigenous peoples of British Columbia. If you recall, we were last at council providing you an update on some changes where we had reapplied for the development permit. That development permit was approved, and we've now moved forward to the detailed design and pre-construction stage, whereby the engineer drawings and the final architectural plans are being completed. This is a sample of the site plan and the civil site plans. So you can see how the building is designed now specifically on the lot 200 Main Street with 2 parking lots, one for staff and one for the visitors and patients of the project. One of the nuances that we had to accommodate was raising the height of the building about 1.5 meters in order to get above the floodplain. So this civil design plan now shows a number of retaining walls where you can see kind of the green around it. That's basically where we had to raise the height of the building and the height of the east parking lot in order to make sure that the building didn't flood in a large rain event. We also worked very hard to preserve as many of the mature trees on the property. So you can see on this plan that a significant number of the trees have been maintained, in particular the trees as we get closer to the lake. So those groves of trees will remain. And if you look at the detailed plan, we're within all the municipal setbacks. So the project does not require any relaxations for parking or for any other of the typical building requirements. So then if we look at the exterior of the building on the next slide, I think we move forward. This is the statistics, by the way. The building is 15,000 square feet. And it's at the highest point is 26.5 feet. And the lowest point where it waves through on the clear height, it's 14 feet clear inside. The community space is slightly higher, being about 20 feet. So there's a number of, that's just building information, but no setbacks or anything are impinged on. So we've done a number of 3D images to try and capture, and this is based on the Douglas Cardinal vision. So if you look at it from a bird's eye view, you can really get a feel for the organic wave of the building, which represents the surrounding hills, and the organic architecture of the curvature of the building, which creates flow throughout the whole thing, typical of the Douglas Cardinal style. On the next slide, we get to a little bit of a view from Main Street, and the building colors are intended to be reflective of red cedar. The light on the building reflecting off it as it moves through the different shadows, you can see this represented here, will give a lot of flow of nature. And the different windows there's different colors of blue, which is intended to reflect the colors of the lake as the sun reflects off the water and waves in the lake. So that's a very distinctive building with no right angles to it. If you look at the next slide, we show the building exterior elevations on all 4 sides now. And it was very difficult for the engineers and the architect to translate the Cardinal vision into something that was fully buildable and try and maintain the cost side of it. Because as you can imagine, a building with no right angles makes it a lot more expensive to build. So that there were some value engineering compromises made, but I think they've done a very good job on Scott Builders, and Will Woodward from Scott Builders has joined us on this call if we have questions for him as well. But I think we balance durability versus economics and the Cardinal vision. And we'll look at some finishes. So along the bottom of the building, we're using a veneered stone to bring in the mountains surrounding the Shuswap area into it. We're working on different color patterns. And that just kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. The metal on the building, oh, sorry, you can go to the next one, thanks. The metal on the building is going to be just in the windows. relative to the aluminum. And it's going to be, as I mentioned, multicolored tinted glass that goes through it. And then if the building exterior, so this is, we had a long debate and we were trying to determine whether we should use real wood or whether we should use a faux wood. We opted to go with faux wood for a couple of reasons. In particular, the long-term maintenance of the building was of great concern to the district of Sicamous and the town management. So we've gone with a metal panel, which, you know, it's obviously metal when you get up close to it, but it has a very much red cedar wood grain to it. And I think we'll be striking a nice compromise between the intent of the building to look organic and the long-term maintenance of the building. So that's kind of where we're looking at relative to different finishes. In terms of our timing now, the building permit is circulating with the District of Sicamous Planning Department. We expect to see that building permit comments and approved by the end of October. Scott Builders is working on the budgeting now that the detailed engineering drawings are done, moving from the Class C budget to the Class B and Class A budgets. We expect to be having that discussion with management and be at council sometime at the end of October or early November to talk about where the final budget comes in, which would then allow us to move forward with the construction contract to build the building. We hope to be in position to start construction by the end of November or early December. And then once we start building, it's about a year to build the building. On the interior of the building, what we've done right now is we've taken a number of elements and started to plug them in as a test fit. This isn't by any means intended to be the actual design of it, but just to see what can fit it within the building. There is an expression of interest that is circulating amongst the community right now that closes at the end of October. Within that circulating EOI, any possible stakeholder, it's being publicly advertised, that's interested in it will be responding, and that will allow the districts of Sicamous to talk about how they use it. So if you look at that orange area on the plan, that area is set aside for third-party stakeholders, whether it's a dentist who's a private sector practitioner or physiotherapist or pharmacist, or IHA is interested in taking space. So we've reserved that area. There's also a community center component preserved in the building, which has been there since the inception. That's that lighter green or darker green area in the bottom left corner. The splat scene area, which is the traditional native healing center, is preserved for them as well. And then we've got a number of other primary care elements. There's area for some optional treatment areas. So in that top left corner, you see there's a hydrotherapy. It could be other things. And then the primary care and behavioral health care areas are also designated based on the identified need of the District of Sicamous. So that kind of gives us an idea of how that could be programmed. That is, as we say, by no means the ultimate. We're waiting for the EOI information to come through. And then relative to the interior, if we look at the next slide, the timing for it, we expect to take that information from the EOI, digest it, create an interior layout through the end of November, which will then we'll work into a detailed interior designer, working with the architect partner, Cover Architects, under contract to Scott Builders. By the end of January, we should have that finished. Then we'll work on the detailed design, and a separate building permit for the interior would need to be circulated, which we expect to have completed by April. And that will time very nicely into the completion and enclosing of the building. Walls will be up, roof will be on, and then they can start working on the interior through May. And then that'll just finish up with the building through the end of 2024 for an early 2025 possession by stakeholders and the DOS for the primary care. Any questions?
Thanks, Brian. Councillor Beach.
To the chair. Thanks, Brian. I love the exterior design. It's so beautiful. I think it's going to be a great building. I must say that I realize that the interior design is not finalized. We do have expressions of interest and out there, and I also noticed that we actually had an EOI for a dental space that got missed in the last rendering, and I don't know if you know that every time you put one out, I do my own rendering on all of the spaces. So I am very interested in making sure that flow and the movement and access in this building is patient-centered and professionally efficient. So I would love to be able to have some time with you, with your design team or with your designs and go through some of the stuff that I know is really important in a center like this. And because it's such a big building, it's about public access and getting full use and of the building as well. So I would really appreciate having an opportunity to sit down with you and sort of go over a lot of those sort of flow of work and flow of access in a building of this size. And yeah.
We'd be honored to spend time with you.
Sure you would.
We're very well aware you have 30 plus years, probably 50 plus years of experience. And what we would like to do, and Karen Eastland actually suggested that, is once that EOI closes, that we arrange a meeting with yourself and other key stakeholders. But if you and I want to chat with Karen separately and have a conversation, as once that EOI closes and we realize, what the level of interest from different stakeholders is, that I would embrace that opportunity.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of questions. So who's the architect of record now on the building? Because
the cover architecture is the architect of record for the design drawings. The architect of record for the design itself and the concept is Douglas Cardinal Architects, but they're an Ottawa-based architect, so they cannot stamp the engineered drawings. So that we've hired cover architects through Scott Builders, who is a BC architect. They're based in Nelson, BC, and they are the architect of record.
I guess just a question around, I mean, this is all kind of hypothetical at this point in terms of the construction schedule. But if we went to, hold on, I'm just looking for the slide here.
Yeah, we can scroll back here.
Yeah, I guess the goals. Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the interior building goals more than anything.
Okay, yeah.
And it's going to be concurrent with the shell building. And I'm just a little concerned about the May to winter period, because that's the busiest time here in Sicamous, and we're going to have to be taking out parking around that area. And I'm just wondering, how disruptive of a construction phase do you think that is?
Well, so that one, that's what, once we hit the interior, it's all inside the building. So we'll take the east parking lot. It won't be paved because we won't pave it till the fall, obviously, because we don't want to ruin the parking lot. But we would use the east parking lot for all the staging. The west parking lot could be completed, and we could actually pave that earlier if you needed for summer. But the west parking lot will be done at the end of the project, probably in the fall. So I would say you'll have the use of the green space throughout the summer, and the building will be fenced off from, let's say, 10 feet on the east side of the building, around the perimeter of the building to the city sidewalk on the south side, and the edge of the property on the north side where the condominium alley or paved alley goes. And then the east parking lot would be fenced off, and everything would happen within that bounded area.
Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I guess it's in terms of the impact of parking, because actually most of those parking spots were completely full the entire summer right down there by, the roundabout. What sort of, would we be able to have the impact of parking kind of minimized by that period, or at least July 1st kind of thing?
I would say,
I know
would
that's a
say
hypothetical.
yes, Counselor, because. But yeah, because the area that we're gonna build on is currently, green space. So we're not taking any net parking stalls away from what the community already has.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah, can I respond? Can I add to that, Brian? Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
so
It's
we,
Will Woodward from.
yeah, Will Woodward with Scott Builders. We would have site fencing around predominantly the park area itself. I mean, we could work on, as Brian discussed, sort of delineating areas within that to ensure there's potentially access to green space. However, we have the parking lot on the northeast that could be used as a laydown area, as well as a parking lot on the east side of the building, which would be used for construction vehicle parking and some laydown area as we move into the interiors. Our goal is to, by spring to have the building relatively enclosed and exterior work done and roofing being worked on. I have Taylor Hogg online here. She's our project manager for the project. So she'll be managing that for us on our behalf. But in terms of impacting net parking, that should be, limited to have a limited impact sort of on the parking. It'll be about maintaining safety around the construction site. That'll be our largest concern, and that will come with site fencing. We'll monitor that site fencing throughout the course of the construction phase.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, on the interior design, I don't see any residential accommodations for healthcare professionals that are visiting to provide expertise, healthcare. What's the reasoning for having that removed?
I think. Sure, I think.
There was two suites at 400 square meters each, I think.
Right, so, and I can speak to that. So I asked for now to remove them, while we're stick handling this other Main Street project for rental housing. So if we're able to maximize healthcare usage here and perhaps get a unit at the apartment complex instead, so we still have a place for professionals to stay. That is still to be determined. There's still that blue square there, purple area here that could still be converted into accommodation space. So the inside is very fluid right now. So I guess over the next 2 to 3 months, that piece will to be determined.
Thanks.
But good question. Yeah.
Anyone else? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, so I just have a question about what you have to do to the site to build it up for the flood mitigation. And we kind of breezed over that. Could you just give a little bit more detail around that?
Sure. Within the city or the DOS bylaw, there's a requirement for a minimum geodetic elevation for all building pads. And in order to meet that elevation, we had to raise the footprint of the building and therefore the footprint of the parking lot so that it matches about 1.5 meters from the current grade. So
Okay.
that if you have a 100-year rain event, for example, the building itself would be above the water level. And if the green space to the west of you flooded, the building itself would still remain dry.
Oh,
So that
okay.
a specific engineering requirement by the DOS.
Okay. And then so then you also had to put then retaining walls along the building as well for that?
That's right, because we didn't want to raise the entire green space area. So we just raised the area that's required. And of course, if it moves up 1.5 meters, you then need to slope it back down when you come off. So the retaining wall holds the earth back against the edge of the building, which is partially the foundation wall of the building. And then it slowly slopes back down, but it needs to meet that grade.
And then this still fits within the footprint of the archaeological.
Correct. And that's why, yeah, if we didn't have the archaeological condition, then we could just slowly slope it all the way back, but we didn't want to change anything and go beyond that site boundary. That's correct.
Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, I just wanted to also comment on the fact that in the beginning, we did, and we do still recognize that having resident units for visiting physicians or locums is a good plan. I think as the floor plan filled up with potential tenants, the reality is that we need to fill that building with paying tenants if we can.
Yeah.
To support it, and we do have other options to look at for residential units.
Yeah, for locums,
That
yes.
it's not a bad plan.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else?
Since we're on this, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess a comment and, you know, when we get the financials, we can go through this. I'm a little concerned with how much community space and then the First Nation space. I mean, it's about 4,300 here. Well, if we add in the 750 square feet for the lobby, we're talking about half this building is going to be non-rentable space as well, because that's going to impact our economics going on. So I assume, and I'm kind of looking at Kelly when I'm asking this, that all of this is going to be costed. We're going to have financial projections on the whole thing when it comes back to council.
Yep. So we will do our best to come up with the most accurate figures as we can for operationally for this building. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, and yes, I agree. There is a lot of like the community space we're not making, but we do have the option to make income from that. That will be rented out to the tenants and to people for if they want to do a wedding there or a birthday party or a business meeting. And there will be a little area here where it can be split off into two separate areas that can be used by two separate groups. So I do think even though, and one of the things when we did back in the day, an assessment, the need for community space was very loud and clear, and that's why this has been incorporated here as well. Interior Health likes it. They could use it for flu shots and those type of things as well, and they would pay for it additionally. So even though I know this doesn't look like it's generating income, it does have the potential to generate income as a multi-use space. But yes, we will take a look and get as accurate of an operating budget as we can with the known cost of our existing medical clinic, some commercial tenant space, operating costs of buildings, and all that kind of good stuff. Correct.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. Go ahead, Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, yeah, I don't disagree with Ian when I look at the size of some of those spaces. But in terms of thinking about sort of what income, what activities could be bringing income to the building, the community space being dividable, it is possible that we can design that area to have a couple of corner breakout rooms or something. You could run an educational conference in there. Again, you'd be charging for the use of the space, so it would be an income. There are so many uses that area would be good for. I don't know myself why the lobby needs to be quite so big, but you know what? I think I understand this is all fluid. We do need to really look at it and make sure that we're getting the best use out of every piece of it. I agree.
Councillor Bailey.
Just one question, just on the building materials, because I kind of asking this question because follow up from Councillor Bushell. We had some concerns with the building materials, being hardy enough for our winter, spring, our humidity levels. And I assume that's why you made the choices that you did. But maybe you can just touch on that a little bit more, because I know it came up the last time we talked about it.
Yeah, originally, if you recall, we were looking at using a cedar shake on it. And I think council had input on it and said, we don't want to have to change out or replace the cedar shingles in the next 20 years. So I think, Will, maybe you can comment, what is it, a 40-year warranty on this product?
Yeah, in terms of warranty on the product, yeah, minimum 40-year warranty on the product, or at least the product that we're looking at right now. So it's a metal product that has an integral sort of pattern on it. So it's resistant to fade, it's not a painted product, it's an integral product to the metal. So in terms of maintenance, it's fairly low key from a maintenance point, low investment in terms of maintenance. So
And
those
then
are some of the, go ahead, Brian.
as well. It's got insulation in behind it, so that's what provides the insulation value.
Correct. Yep.
And
Go ahead.
since we just talked about this, it's, there's some fire resistancy to it and.
I don't, I can look into that and get the fire sort of rating on the product, but given that it's metal, it will have some natural fire resistant ratings to it, but I can get some specific data on fire resistance.
Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, yeah, so along that same line as Councillor Bailey, a nice sprinkler system on the roof would be good too. Just in terms of wildfire. You know, to be thinking about that, I mean, I think that if we're building stuff here, we should be thinking about all of that, all of those things.
Yeah, we can look and maybe Will, I don't know, can you look at what the fire of the roof is as well?
Yeah, I can look in it. I can't recall right off the top of my head what's specified for the roof, whether it's an EPDM or an alternate sort of roofing system. Currently the design doesn't include a roof sprinkler system just because the size of the building doesn't necessitate us having an internal sprinkler system, but that's something that we can certainly look at and provide option for.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey,
and if we have threatening this building, there's a lot bigger problems, I think.
Thank you. Council, any other questions? Okay, I think that's it from us. Thank you guys so much. Looks great. We're excited.
We look forward to seeing you all.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna back up. Go ahead, Karen. And Sycamus Community Health Center, third quarter update. Karen, Eastland, take it away.
Everybody, here. Some third quarter update for the clinic. So on the June 28th meeting, it was announced that we'd be taking new patients at the clinic. And since then, we've attached 93 patients to the panel and will not be taking any more on for now. The total patient panel and seen within the last 2 years. And I say that because significantly bigger than 27, 24, but we do run a lot of the numbers trying to be consistent with what we're running. There's probably another 200 that haven't been seen between 3 and 5 years, and some even after 5, but they're still considered active patients. So our current patient panel now is 27, 24. Since January, the total number of visits was 10,243. This was stats as of October 4th or something. Walk-ins 968 and telehealth 4345. So walk-ins still comprise about 10%, and telehealth about 42. We kind of thought that might go down a little bit, but it's just such a brilliant it's such a brilliant option because it's convenient and not everybody needs to be seen at the time. So the Eagle Valley Secondary School Wellness Clinic is back underway as of October 4th. It runs every second Wednesday from noon to 3:30. Our nurse practitioner, Jennifer Post-Balford, along with options for sexual health and mental health support are available to students. Is dedicated to promoting physical, emotional, and social well-being by delivering direct care and support for students. And Jen is the best person for the job. She's great at it. Students love her. Rural health initiatives. On August 28th, Councillor Beach and I participated in a focus group It's a discussion that led by, was a study that's being led by Dr. Jude Cornelson. She's the Associate Professor at the Department of Family Practice at UBC and the Center for Rural Health Research. This work was supported by the BC Association of Community Health Centers, and learnings from this study will be used to inform the development of CHCs across BC. The plan for the team initially was to visit selected communities, so that Catherine and Kate and Jude were going to be coming to Sycamoose. They wanted to see and actually meet us all, but it didn't work out that way because of the fires. So it was a virtual meeting, and they were very interested in talking about engagement strategies that have been utilized by other CHCs in BC all along the way in the beginning and implementation of the concept. And they were really interested in how like the district of Sycamoose looked at developing a CHC as an economic driver. Jude was quite, she kept going back to that, so it was really interesting. So that's a good thing. The BC Rural Health Network Implementation Committee developed a gap analysis that was shared widely amongst all of our, everybody on the committee and everybody's networks. And they received actually close to 700 responses, which they were overwhelmed with, which is really great for a study. So this data is really important to support policy position and advocacy for a new model of community engagement in rural areas. The project is called Closing the Gap, and it aims to examine the role of rural communities in policy decisions, identify the disconnects, and develop strategies for effective engagement. It's discussing what should be happening in rural areas by discussing it with the people who live there and the people that serve in those communities versus just sort of, you know, an idea or a theory. So they're actually boots on the ground talking to people about recruitment and retention and transportation and access to services and those types of things. Health Minister Adrian Dix was quoted recently as saying, absolutely, we're committed to providing more and better service in rural BC. So the BC Rural Health Network, Canadian Association of Community Health Centers, the Rural Coordination Center are amongst, you know, many organizations that continue to advocate to that end. So they're kind of holding them accountable to that. So that's very positive. Team-based care. At the August 23rd, council meeting, a resolution was passed to explore team-based care training for mayor and council. I sent links to a Team Up podcast and some other self-directed resources through the BC Patient Safety and Quality Council. It's going to be different for everybody, how much they want to learn, what they take from it. Like the podcasts are amazing, but you know, each time I listen to something, you hear something different. It's relevant to me, might not be relevant to you. And really, at the end of the day, it's kind of up to me to help to develop that team at the center. And further to the team-based podcast and what have you, another application to the quality team coaching for rural BC, Rural Coordination Center is I'm going to reapply in January. We were denied last time, but that's actually good, I think, because by then we'll have a clearer picture of what's really going to be in the center, and we can start working with the group of people that are going to be in the center and what that's going to look like. And so that's where the team-based training and development is really going to shine. So I did participate in a workshop last night through RCCBC, which it is called Finding Your Way in Teamwork and Team Coaching Principles. The workshop was facilitated by Dr. Gupta and Dr. Andreas, who are the quality team coaching coaches. And it was just a snapshot of what the full program entails. And the basis is that the evidence shows that the effective teams create a culture that both improves patient safety and enhances satisfaction and joy in healthcare providers. And actually, there was a lot of people in that webinar. It was quite interesting. We did little breakout groups, and there's a lot of passion and a lot of information and resources behind all that. I mentioned in the prior meeting that we have some RCME, which rural continuing medical education funds, available to us through, the Rural Coordination Center, and it's about $16,000. So I'm looking at and exploring, I got input from our team, what they would like to see there, and so Focus, which is a point of care ultrasound, so handheld ultrasound, equipment and training, and an AED, which is really critical, were the big things, and potentially cryotherapy, which is basically liquid nitrogen, and I don't know if we're gonna be able to make that fly, but I'm trying. So if we can get it paid for, what the heck, so. Okay, and so the Healing Center. September 8th, Kelly and I met had a very encouraging meeting with Chris Sims, who is the new Interior Health Executive Director, and Darren Clausen, who's the Director of Clinical Director of Clinical Services, regarding their inclusion in the center. And they're very aware of the time-sensitive nature and of our need to solidify the operational map. And so, although we still haven't heard back from them, we are really hopeful that it'll be a positive outcome. However, we have to, plan for that not being the case. So, which is why the floor plan that you saw is kind of basic at this stage, because there's lots of puzzle pieces that need to be plugged in, and the flow and that type of thing. So we are still hopeful that it would make so much sense, even from the optics for interior health, because there's so much, there's the advocacy for community health centers and what that looks like, and really being having a true community health center where all services are under one roof. So we're hopeful, and it was very positive. So as Brian mentioned, there was another round of the expression of interest that has been circulated, closing on November 3rd. Although we did have a terrific response to the first round, it was during the summer, so that some people might have missed out. So we just want to make sure that we have everybody involved that wants to be involved, or we have the best possible group and map that we can have. So there's, and I've mentioned this too at a different meeting, but blue zones is something that's quite interesting. There are communities that have a higher than normal ratio of citizens over 100, when the average age is 77, and they're not just living, they are surviving and living and thriving. And so their concept is when a region's collective health increases, health costs decrease, and sometimes dramatically, it's an evidence-based approach to improve health and well-being. And so, and I always, I've been looking at it for a long time. There's different recipes, there's all kinds of things that you can find on Blue Zone. And the 6 or 7 areas that are now identified as Blue Zone are all in tropical areas, so you can appreciate that, they're out and about more and that kind of thing. But interesting, Airdrie, Alberta is well on its way to being classified as a Blue Zone. That's because they have made it a concentrated effort to increase health and well-being in their community and what that looks. So, and so,
Who knew?
so right now, I'm part of that initiative for what we've talked about in the past too, is working on the business case for the inclusion of an aquatic therapy, in the new center, and researching projects that are associated with improving health outcomes and quality of life to residents and surrounding communities, and how that might boost the economy. And I'll have that report ready in advance of the next meeting. So now, one thing I did forget to put in here is there is a Saturday clinic. The Shuswap North Okanagan Division of Family Practice has created an initiative to take the pressure off of the emergency department at the hospital. So all the doctors in the area, or most of the doctors, have signed on for this. And so what it is that every Saturday from 9 to 2, there's a walk-in clinic at one of the existing clinics. And so there's a website, there's a QR code you can scan to find where the clinic is that week. And so it's funded by divisions. And the MOAs, like Kara and Carla Sanders hasn't agreed, but it doesn't matter, to work. So our first clinic in here is December 23rd. Jennifer is going to do that clinic, and Kira will be the MOA, and there's no extra cost to the clinic for that. It's all run through the divisions, and so they pay the MOAs and the doctors or the practitioners bill as they normally do. So that's a really big thing for the area. So thank you to Tracy Kirkman for making that happen. And so that's it for me. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. It's great information. You're doing a great job. You know, we're in a really exciting time right now because with the healing center being built and the programs that you've got going on. Yeah, we have an opportunity to shine here. And we need to realize how fortunate we are to have a medical clinic in our town that is now 2,700 patient panel, which was 1,800 when we first took it over. So how long before those patients drop off that panel and you don't call them a patient anymore? Or do they ever? I know what some of them you haven't seen them for 5 years.
No, sorry. That number was the panel based on people that have been there within the last 2 years. So there's a greater number, and even a greater number of 5 and over that haven't been seen. And so I would say it's probably closer to 2,900 to 3,000.
Yeah, I didn't mean drop. I meant it's the list.
Daryl.
So, sorry? So 29.
Yeah, like it's higher than 27, 24, just because of those extra. But for these numbers that I ran, I based it off up to 2 years.
Yeah.
Which is the bulk of it. So
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, and this isn't going to get any simpler because the amount of people that are coming to Canada are moving here compared to the medical facilities that are going up or the number of doctors. I mean, there's going to be a breaking point, right? So we're very fortunate. Councillor Beach.
Yeah. Through the chair. Yeah, just to that, generally speaking, there is a shortage of family physicians everywhere. And so when somebody attaches, unless they're transient in your community, when they attach to one of your team, then you can expect them to remain attached until they leave the area, if you know what I mean. And sometimes if they can't find physicians or care elsewhere and they're close enough, they'll still drive back and come to see your team.
or telehealth.
Or do telehealth,
Yeah.
right? Now, so thank goodness for telehealth, but so the attachments don't usually end until somebody passes away or they move so far away they have to find another physician or care team. Yeah, so this is kind of an ongoing building of patient care, and the load will keep increasing as we attract people here.
Thanks, Pam. Go ahead, Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. So 2 things, Karen. One, again, just a shout out to what the clinic is doing, and I volunteer with different seniors and different things, people in town. And Sycamus needs to continue to know that you can get into the clinic in a day. I have never had anyone wait more than 2 days to be able to either do a teleconference or talk to someone or someone direct them. And your staff is always outgoing and kind and problem solve. And I think we really have to acknowledge that, because when you go into other communities, that just doesn't happen. So huge shout out.
MOAs are.
Yeah, MOAs are doctors, the way the clinics run, like it's a fabulous little machine. And I think the other thing, my next question is, where are we going to advertise that we're going to have those walk-in clinics on Saturday? Because I think that's something that we really need to get that out into the community. You don't need to go to the hospital.
It's on the Community Health Center Facebook page, and I believe it's on the District of Sycamores page as well. Sarah had that. It's posted all over our clinic. And we talk about it a lot.
Okay,
And
this
so we
is,
have some handouts as well, so, patients can pick those up. And every other clinic in Salmon Run is doing the same. Okay, so.
I'm wondering if maybe we can get it out to even the school pack page or the seniors, poster up at the seniors center.
Yeah, okay.
Those are places that I look, because I haven't seen it.
Mhm.
And it's definitely something that, there are people that, you need help on the weekends and you don't know where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I will look at distributing it further.
Thank you.
And even like this, the school bulletin board and that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%.
So they just had their first weekend, their first clinic on Saturday.
Go ahead, Councillor Beach.
Through the chair, yeah, I wanna say that you guys, your philosophy there, it's wonderful. It's wonderful that people can actually get in and be seen within a day or two, and sometimes the same day. It's unheard of in most communities right now. People are having to wait 1 to 2 to 3 weeks to even talk to their doctor on the phone, and could be dead by the time they, I'm just saying, no, it's bad. It's bad. It's really bad. Okay.
As our population grows, it's gonna get worse. So I just have a thought for like recruiting. So once we have this brilliant facility and this great team inside of it, is there an opportunity right now for us to take that floor plan, that building, and reach out to some headhunters? Because we're only 2 years away from having this, right? So there's probably now is the time for people to start going, hey, you know what? Look what's going on in Sycamores. I could look at making a move there in a year.
Yeah.
So maybe there's an opportunity of taking the picture and the floor plan.
The map, the operational map really nailed down. That's definitely something, that we will share out there for sure.
Yeah.
We had a committee office last week. Vicky was in Italy, and we just tried to ply it with homemade muffins.
Anything.
But he's just welcoming right now all over the place in Samanar and looking for a home clinic, although I don't think he wants to drive, but out here, but anyway, we'll see what happens. But I think once we get that really nailed down, and it's gonna be a facility with a difference. And so it was interesting last night in that team building seminar or workshop, there was a lot of, because it's for rural health, there was a lot of physicians and other practitioners that work in community health centers from small communities. And so that is an opportunity to shout it out, and I do as much as I can. But again, it's gonna really help when we have it.
A new facility, yeah, for sure.
There's just a lot of work to be done before we do that, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I have so much to say. Through the chair. Karen and I have had conversations about this, and I think too that our aim to build a primary care team is with all of the other professionals very in close proximity, is a recruiting tool, because it takes away the pressure, not only of the financial business piece, that is one of them, that is a recruiting tool, but also the pressure of being alone with all of the problems. So I think that the team podcasts are things that we can use if someone is showing some interest, or that we can put out there into potential recruits. to show them that this is where we're headed. This is the team building we're going to be doing, and you're going to be in a really supported environment working, not burning out and feeling overwhelmed. And that's a huge thing nowadays.
We're fortunate here for sure, and we should all be grateful that we have healthcare clinic and the staff that we have, and that we have the new center and the potential for more docs. Having said that, thank you, Karen. That was awesome. Good job. Okay, we're gonna move on to the housing strategy implementation update, secondary dwelling. Sarah, do you want to take that away?
Here.
You're welcome.
A little update in regards to housing strategy and the outcomes of the housing review of the EOI for building plans for secondary dwelling units. Mouthful there. So just a reminder from last time that we talked about this, the shortlisted proponents were adaptive homes, housing projects, and construction. So last Wednesday, October 5th, the housing committee and had a really good discussion, and we came up with a couple options for council. So this depends on how council is feeling about this. So option 1 was for proponents of housing projects. Option 2 would be to work with both housing projects and procurement construction to buy additional plans. That, however, would require an increase in the budget. And I did out to verify the validity of the numbers they gave us for folks, and they are still good. McDermott did make a note that what they quoted was good for the next 6 months. So with that shared, I do have the information, updated information here for the parking data. And I'm looking at the back over the
All right, any questions? Councillor Bailey.
So the recommendation here, what is that? That's from the housing committee?
Nate.
No, I'm asking here, the preferred opponent, is that the recommendation from the housing committee?
Through the chair, yes, and it wasn't presented in application form. So it's the head of tonight for the recommendations.
Okay. And can we say why that is the preferred proponent?
Absolutely. Next slide, please. So the committee did put together a matrix for how to assess the various proposals. So each company had different value-added services that were part of their proposal. So these are 1 through 11, and there's a list on the right side there indicating what that is for. This is everything for, are they going to be looking at Sycamoos's particular characteristics and circumstances in terms of, what a typical existing property might look like in terms of the design of the building. How are they going to include scoping meetings? How many scoping meetings? Are there going to be options for concepts before we have to commit, districts to commit to choosing the plans? It goes all the way through to, are they proposing that proposal of a benefit to the end user being our homeowners, in terms of them purchasing these plans. So there's a star in each column where that proponent is offering one of those things. So 3 of the proponents that were considered to meet the EOI criteria kind of came out on top in terms of what they were offering. And by far, housing projects offered the most, especially in terms of for the end user. So, and the big pieces of that were they will be providing BC building code updates as the province changes those requirements. So we have step 3 to step 4. They're going to update those plans for us without additional costs. And then the other component is that they will do minor revisions to the plans so that they fit individual sites. So this isn't necessarily about aesthetics. This is more about, weird idiosyncrasies just to make that work. And then the other thing that was really fantastic is that as far as the loyalty rebate goes, it's pretty affordable to my mind anyway, at $5 million per use, but they're also offering each plan free the first time. So in terms of getting this off the ground and getting some pilot projects built to increase interest in this housing type is a way of addressing some of our housing gaps. That's really fantastic. It's not something that the district needs to come up with the funds to cover in terms of setting up a pilot program.
Go ahead, Councillor Bailey.
So I'm just looking at the list here. Looks like, if I'm reading that correct, that this is the most expensive at $97.50.
To the chair. So it does come in within the housing. So there's a line item of $10,000 to work with this particular year. What is the other bonus for going with housing is that they are an architect, which means that you know, the housing committee would like to continue building the library and add other building types to it. And some of those other building types require an architect to actually stamp and seal those drawings so that they can be issued. So that's when you hit sweetness. So if you were looking at townhouses or houseplexes, you would need an architect to sign off on that. So that would be a nice value added thing for next year.
Yeah. Councillor Bailey.
And then just a question here. I'm looking for it, but I'll just ask you the question. So there's 3 stars beside the $500 royalty one. What does that equate or mean? Got $500. Yeah, start.
Up in the top.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I didn't put it on there, but that is what I was saying about the free royalty. So the first 3 uses of those.
It's free. And then the 4th user would have to pay the 500.
Yes.
Anyone else? Councillor McCabe?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that on the agenda for council this evening, there's only one recommendation, but if you could, Kelly, if you could bring up the link in the housing report strategy there.
On the regular meeting tonight?
No, in the meeting we're at, right?
Okay, sorry.
The first link under the secondary dwelling initiative. Anyhow, there's 2 recommendations. One that housing was the top proponent. And we could recommend the committee could recommend to council, housing committee recommend to council that we award them a contract, or that the district increase the budget by $6,000 and we award 2 contracts, one to housing and one to McDermott. That way, that's not on the agenda this evening, that was missed. So when that comes up this evening, there'll be 2 recommendations for council to consider, not just the one that's on the agenda for this evening. The second one isn't on there to award 2 because it was such a tight timeline. We met on Thursday. The cutoff for the agenda council was actually Wednesday afternoon. We met on Thursday. Got it on the agenda for Friday, but it was a little rushed. So in my opinion, the housing committee is actually recommending that the district increase the budget by $6,000 and go with 2 proponents to award. That way there'll be a larger diversity in the town library for residents to come in their front desk and choose from to help be more successful in this one tool of infill and their dwellings.
Thank you. Thanks. Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, it was a bit of a quick turnaround, and with that resolution on there, we clearly misunderstood the intent of the housing committee. So really, the housing committee wanted to bring 2 options forward to council. One, just go with the housing, and one to go with housing and McDermott and increase the budget by another $6,000. So really, those options are on the table for council to make tonight. I don't know if the housing committee wants to talk to that further, or if there was a preference.
So sorry, is that the recommendation?
For 2.
There's only one recommendation here.
Right, but
And this isn't the one that you want to have on the
It depends on this discussion. Do we want to go with one component or do we want to go with two and increase the budget? I guess we can have preliminary discussions here and then so we know what resolutions to have ready for later tonight.
Gets through the chair. So we were presented, I believe, with 10 altogether. We had 6 very good competing choices in our EOI. There were 3 that really suited Sycamore. When we asked for a housing budget at financial meetings last year, it kind of was just like a placeholder and we'd probably never had any money before this year. So we came up with 10 grand as a council and dropped that without ever knowing what housing needed. So there's a lot of different components going into promoting housing in Sycamore and building places for our community in different levels. And this is just one of them. So after sitting for, I think, about a year and a half now, a little over a year and a half, what we realized is we do need some money to put into being able to promote Sycamore, to have some housing and help people build housing. And one of them is, one component of this is this housing library. So what housing, and I think I'm speaking for us, is that we feel like instead of just going in with 3 plans and here's your option and you walk into Sycamore and we say, hey, we've got this housing library of housing, and which is our recommendation, but choose what you like. But we thought housing would be the best one, that if we increased our budget and said, hey, here's 2 options and here's the reason why, because this is going to be continuing, right? We need to look at duplexes and fourplexes. The housing committee is not going away that I know of. So we're going to continue trying to help people come to Sycamore and build homes and encourage them to do that. So the housing committee would like to see a budget increase of $6,000 and that we chose 2 sets of plans. So that's what we're asking for. Oh, I think Sarah's going to correct me.
Counselor, go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, I just wanted to interject. So I think what we talked about is that 3 plans from housing and 3 plans from McDermott's for a total of 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Counselor Beach.
Through the chair, I really think it's a great idea to provide a more diverse selection for people to choose plans from. I just because they all have their own kind of look, the plans, I think that would be a good idea to do.
Counselor Bailey.
I guess I'm looking at Bianca now. Do we have this ability?
So currently the housing, that 10,000 original is being funded out of our operating reserve.
Yeah.
So we do have room in the operating reserve if you wanted to up it and take it from the operating reserve. One thing to note is, because we know this is going to be an ongoing thing, that 10,000, we kind of always take it from reserve. We're going to have to bring it into our general eventually, because what we try to use the operating reserve for is one-off. I think we've established it's not going away. So 2024, we'll have to take a look, talking about duplexes and all of that. That's another thing, right? Right now, we do have room in the operating reserve, but at the same time, I'm also looking, we have 6 months on the other one. Do we want to
Put it in the next one.
2024, that's also an option. That's council's choice.
Kelly, go ahead.
And further to that, a few years ago, recommended by Councillor McCabe, we do have a housing reserve now, right? And we put in 20,000 a year and we really haven't used that housing reserve. Maybe we applied, and so we do have, I'm not sure how much is in there right now, but we do have money specifically for housing related projects that we can use that money towards.
Counselor Rich.
Off operating reserve. Just
Counselor Rich.
it's not a material impact.
Okay.
To the financial.
Doable.
It's definitely doable this year. Yes.
6,000 is doable.
Okay, well, you never know.
Yeah, no, we're okay.
Through the chair, Mel, Councillor McCabe and I have sat through many housing committee meetings and through BC meetings. We're ahead of the game on this, and I would like to see Sycamoose continue to be ahead of game on this. And when you look at communities that actually have these libraries, like Kelowna, they're massively successful. That the community comes in and someone wants to build a secondary suite, and instead of being confused and walking in and going, oh my gosh, we got to do this and we've got to do what and DCCs and yada, yada, yada. We hand them a package. We say, with your lot, this is what you can do. Here's some options. Off you go and thank you for building. So we're ahead of the game on this, but we need to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Good stuff.
Okay, so Kelly, you'll get a resolution for it. Perfect. Okay, so thank you, Sarah. Okay, so Kelly, 2023 Union of British Columbia Municipalities Convention Staff Report.
Yeah, so I'll keep this pretty brief as we all attended UBCM, but this is just a nice summary page. I'm just gonna make sure it's shared with those people online. And I'm not gonna go through it in detail. This is just to highlight what we did the week of September 18th at UBCM, which is the Union of BC Municipalities Annual Conference. It's a very important conference. We do a lot of meeting with different ministry staff, as well as ministries, as well as other local governments. In general, we had a total of 9 meetings, of which 4 were with ministry staff and 5 were with actual ministers, of which I have listed them here. Who we met with, the topic, and what kind of the outcome or the update was. So this will be good going into next year as well as for follow-up. In addition, council was successful in getting all 3 resolutions submitted endorsed at UBCM. And we managed to better our relationships with the CSRD. We had a lovely dinner with them and other local governments across BC. And I've just got a few pictures. So I wasn't planning on going through these in detail. They're here if anybody's got any questions, has any follow-up concerns. But this is just a nice little summary document that we can refer to as the year progresses and make sure we're on top of it.
Thank you. Yeah, and we can do that. We can refer to that for next year as well. And we are in the process of sending out thank you letters to all of the ministers and staff that we did visit. Does anyone have any comments on this? Does anybody want to comment on this? Councillor McKay.
I just think it's an excellent idea to do those follow-up letters and thank you and document what we've discussed and just use that as a tool for next year and say thank you for following through or.
Well, you said. Go ahead, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you to Kelly for keeping us on track that week. And also thank you to all the staff who did the binders and all the organization. You guys did a great job.
Yeah, for sure. It made it a lot simpler. Okay, so we'll go into councillor reports. So we'll start with Councillor Evans.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor.
You're very welcome, Councillor.
I would like to just highlight one thing, and that's last week I hosted the open house at the library for a good number of people from the community, along with Jeremy, our CFO, Regional Library Board, on which I sit from this council, since we pay taxes to keep our library open. And it was a great session, and lots of folks from the community came and gave their input. And we are currently not able to offer more days because we don't want to raise taxes for the library to be open. But there's a lot more stuff that's coming down the pipe that's going to be free, including I think we're still not having to pay late fees, which is something. There you go. If you want to build a robot, talk to me. They can have a robot building night and you can have somebody to make your coffee in the morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Rich.
Attended Truth and Reconciliation, Pam, Sarah Kyle, Kelly were there. Absolutely fabulous day. Great day.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe.
Also housing committee.
Oh.
We met for the housing committee and looked at expressions of interest, and those are recommendations that the committee's brought to council for discussion this evening. And met briefly with Kelly and
Pam?
Pam, thank you. And made the decision that, yeah, let's do one more round with the expression of interest for the community health center for might be there as tenants. That was about it.
Awesome. Counselor Beach.
Well, I'm going back because we missed the last reports, I guess I'm realizing, but I just want to say that the golf tournament experience was really, really good. And the turnout was just amazing. It had a good feel as well, as did Orange Shirt Day, that Siobhan and we went to. At the end of August, Karen made reference to the sort of research piece that was being done by the Rural Health Committee from the Rural Health Network on Jude Corneliuson, who we get to work with through the implementation committee, and she's an amazing research person with UBC Okanagan. And yes, I did the expression of interest brief meeting where we made those very critical decisions to do another round. And I also, while I was trying to stay out of circulation, but wanting to be outside, did a little bit of reconnaissance on the traffic corridor, which I really enjoyed walking around and kind of watching our traffic on October, I think it was 5th or something. After reading the report, it just kind of, I thought I got to go take a look at this, and I drove all of that area a few times to, and so yeah, so a little reconnaissance on that, which I really enjoyed with some nice sunshine. So yeah, it's been busy. Well, and I think I did a couple of renderings for the healing centers.
Why do we pay an architect? Counselor Bailey.
Who knew? Yeah, just draw it right up.
Exactly.
Well, obviously UBCM, we had another council meeting in between here and this report, and then planning and development, and I can't remember anything else. It's been a bit of a 6 months, so yeah.
Does Counselor Bushel want to weigh in?
You might be driving.
Yeah.
Oh, he's good.
I doubt it, hey?
Yeah.
He's probably driving. Okay, we'll just move on without him. Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind couple of weeks. We went to UBCM, Kelly and I, and we were all successful in our ministry meetings. Kelly and I got a call from BC Belts. So remember the people that ran out of the housing meeting and said, "Where's the mayor?" Those are the folks that reached out to us. So we have a meeting with Lisa next week. Kelly and Daryl and I also met with Rona, Darcy and Jeff from the recreation or the arena, and had a bit of a discussion. So interesting to find out what still needs to be done at the arena and what kind of projects they've got on the go. And talked a bit about scheduling and things like that, but nothing in concrete yet. But it was a good meeting. It was positive, and Darcy is now gone to, I think, Cowichan. I think he's the operations manager at Cowichan. So he just wanted to make sure that everybody was in the loop as to what was kind of going on. Other than that, do we have any folks online that have some questions? Got nothing? No hands?
No hands.
All right. Well, let's adjourn the two. Kelly, should I go into in camera or should adjourn this one?
Yeah.
Let's adjourn the committee of the whole meeting at 2:44, Wednesday, October 11th. Counselor Bailey, Counselor Rich, all in favor. Carried. We are adjourned till 3.
Okay.